This was an introduction, sort of a reminder and introduction of what we've been doing for this whole first of this year. Bless your heart, based on the Beatitudes, the introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. And remember, this whole teaching, this Sermon on the Mount that Jesus put out there on the hillside for initially just his disciples. They were the ones that were close to him, but then obviously a number of other people were on the hillside. This teaching was one in which he was radically offering something different for those who followed him. The teaching was radically different than any other rabbi who had been teaching these people their whole life. And so this is what this brings us into, this teaching of this final beatitude that Jesus is talking to us today about. But before we get into that, I want to start out with a statement. I love the destination, but the journey is difficult. I love the destination, but the journey is difficult. For 5 years, we as a family made a trip to Cynthiana, Kentucky, 610 miles one way. 610 miles one way. Right? That was the furthest we had ever lived away. Montgomery got us a little bit closer. Then we split the difference when we moved back to Dothan. But the furthest we ever drove was when we were in Florida and had 610 miles to go to Kentucky. That's where my wife's mother lived. And so that was a regular trip for us. Not once, sometimes a couple times a year, right? And part of the trip, I love getting there, right? Because once you get there and you have grandkids, what do? Here you go, right? Here you go. And I love that. I love that part of it because once I got to the destination, we go, here you go, Grandma. Congratulations. They're yours. Oh, by the way, you don't realize how much you love having grandparents until you don't. So that trip to Cynthiana, I refer to this era when we were making this trip as BB, before Buc-ee's, all right? Okay. It's a whole lot nicer to make that trip now. Anyway, because it's halfway there, we get this wonderful stop. Anyway, so we make this trip and, a lot of hours, right? A lot of hours in the car. And there was a few times where my wife and I said, hey, let's make this easy on the kids and we're going to drive all night. And then when we get there, we crash and hand the kids off, right? That trip is just brutal. That trip, it was brutal. But once we got there, in those days, we crashed a little bit and let the kids hang out with grandparents was awesome. But just part of those number of those trips, our kids got to see snow, right? I know some of you saw it for the first time a couple weeks ago, right? Some kids of ours and grandkids saw it for the first time, literally. But this was regular for us when we were going to Kentucky. We hit it at the time. It was almost like every time we made that trip, particularly during December time, we would get snow, and the kids loved it. So we love that part of the destination, being there where the kids enjoy the snow, or one of my favorite theme parks, or if not the favorite theme park, is Kings Island outside of Cincinnati, and we took the kids there. We took them somewhere up there. We also, go snow skiing with them when my leg allowed me to, and we go fishing. I mean, just the destination was great. The destination was great, but gosh, the journey is a little more difficult, and it got a little harder and harder as it went. But I want to remind us today that the destination can be great. And actually, the destination is great for you and me. Jesus even said that destination is great, because he said in Matthew 5:12, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. Who is he talking to? He's talking to these people who are going to follow him. He's talking to these people on the hillside, and he's letting them know, hey, great is your reward in heaven. In heaven is this great reward. And he said, rejoice and be glad. This is an exceedingly glad. This word means exceedingly glad. Not just like, but it's like awesome. It's, for those of us that read and see some of the celebrations of post-World War II, the huge celebrations that they had when the war ended, it was that type of thing, exceedingly glad. For those of you in my generation, Prince, party like it's 1999. That's, it's that type of party. Jesus tells us that heaven celebrates when one lost sinner comes home. Can you imagine the celebration in heaven when it's times a billion? When it's times billions. This is exceedingly glad of this reward in heaven, where the destination is awesome, where it's great, and there's going to be a party. Jesus ends this way, but we got to go back a little bit, because it's a little bit different than what you might think to get there. Because our last beatitude actually is verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now I want you to understand real quickly that when kingdom of heaven is mentioned here, it's the same as he began the Beatitudes. Remember, he said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This was Matthew's way of actually saying kingdom of God. It was like make up there, come down here type thing. So he was not, this was not a reference to the reward in heaven. That's why Jesus said that a little bit later, right? This is, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, because the kingdom of God is with you in the midst of this. So he begins it and ends it the same way. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. For God make up there, come down here. And then those who are persecuted, God make up there, come down here during that as well. When we hear this, I want you to understand there's a difference that we need to think about. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. And that's the kicker, right? Because of righteousness. Life is difficult. Life will always be difficult. Life doesn't get easier as we grow older. Life gets a little more complicated, a little more difficult. Our perspective probably changes as we mature, but doesn't get any easier. Life is difficult. And that's just a reality of life. And that's across the board, right? I think the scriptures tells us it rains on the just and the unjust. It rains on the righteous and the non-righteous. So the difficulties are for everybody. But that's not what Jesus is talking about. Jesus is saying there's another level for those who believe in him, those who follow him. He says there's going to be persecution. There's going to be persecution. Not just for the sake of getting harmed. No, it's going to be persecution because you chose me. When you choose me, here's what's likely going to happen. When you choose the right way, it may mean you're choosing the hard way. When you choose the right way, it may mean you're choosing the hard way. When you choose the right way, you're saying and agreeing to this, right? I am poor in spirit. I have this desire to understand that I have a total dependence on God. I mourn. I am meek. I hunger and thirst for righteousness. I am merciful. I have a pure heart, a singular heart toward God, and I am a peacemaker. And what does all that get me? What does all that get me? Pain and discomfort. Pain and discomfort. When Jesus was talking to this original audience, I want you to understand, as he was addressing, remember the disciples were real close to him, and then all the other people on the hillside. When he was addressing them, as he was saying this, he knew full well that all those in that audience that chose to follow him, they would never know life without persecution. They would never, in their lifetime, know what it would mean not to be persecuted. That was what they were choosing. If they chose to follow this rabbi, and they believed it was the right way, then they were choosing the hard way and not just choosing more difficult life. They were most likely choosing death. In the 20th century, 45 million followers of Jesus have been estimated to have been killed simply because they were followers of Jesus. From 2011 to the year 2000, it was just shy of 1 million that were most likely killed because of their faith. Things have gotten a little better worldwide, truthfully. The last number of years is between 5,000 and 6,000 a year. They were choosing the right way, knowing it was not just going to be difficult, knowing that it was most likely going to be choosing death. And I think the United States mostly has sort of been immune to this worldwide attack on Christians because of the way we were founded. Right? We were founded on religious freedom, so there's a good chance that that's been playing into our history, our brief history as a country, as a nation. But I believe that Jesus knew that it was simply not going to be about the Stephens in the world or his disciples that would die because of their following him. There would be more to it for all people. And that's why he expanded this one beatitude. He expanded, right? He didn't leave it right there. Blessed are those who are persecuted, right? He expanded it. He said, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you, again, because of following Jesus. Because you chose to follow Jesus, there's going to be people who insult you, yes, and persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Let me go ahead and complete it, and I'm going to go back to 11. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. Again, he's going back. He's letting them know, yes, there is a destination that awaits you. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. He's going back to the Old Testament saying, hey, this is nothing new. People who follow God, who choose the right way, are choosing the hard way. The prophets, they were persecuted as well. Okay? So I'm going to go back to verse 11 and read that again. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. And what that means for us is that there's a chance, because we choose to follow Jesus, because we choose to follow Jesus, our rabbi, that we're going to get ignored. We're going to get lied to. We're going to get people insulting us. This is more where we are in our world today, right? We don't have to worry about somebody putting a gun to our head and asking us if you believe in God or not. It's happened a couple times in the United States, but those are more outliers than the normal occurrence as we see around the world, right? You're going to be insulted, lied to, ignored, not invited to different things because of Jesus. And here's what I think that we're moving closer and closer to. Jesus in me means the world is against me. Jesus in me means the world is against me. Now, you may not feel it, and let me be honest. You're probably not going to feel it as intensely here as some other places. There are other states and other places in the United States where somebody taking a stand for Jesus has been taken to court, a florist or a baker or a coach. They've been taken to court. There's another person who has been simply quoting Jesus online. And a person has taken out a restraining order against them simply for posting the words of Jesus online. A professional football player who happens to be Roman Catholic, speaking at a Roman Catholic event, speaking basically some of the tenets of what the Roman Catholics believe, that based on their interpretation of the Bible, is roasted by the media, roasted online. Street preacher, Glendale, Arizona, name is Hans Schmidt, was shot in the head as he was preaching. He survived. A number of us make fun of college football teams playing the Little Sisters of the Poor, right? But that's an actual thing, Little Sisters of the Poor. 10 years, 10 years they were in the court system because they did not believe that they should be paying for contraceptives that were against their biblically held beliefs. It took 10 years for that to finally be cleared up. Supreme Court also finally made a decision in 22 that just because you work in a particular job in the public sector or even work for a public entity doesn't mean you will leave your religious beliefs at the door. We may not be a post-Christian culture yet in our neck of the woods, but it's coming. It's coming. It is in parts of our nation now, post-Christian. I don't think we feel it as much here as other parts of North America, and particularly the north part of us, but Canada knows for sure they are post-Christian culture. And normally we're about 10 years behind Canada on some of this stuff, right? So the insults, the lies against us, those are going to intensify. They really are. I think they're going to intensify. And what I'm seeing, and here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that when we get into arguments and when we get into battles, when everything is based on feelings and emotions, there are no winners. There are no winners. When emotions dictate the battle, nobody's going to win. But here's where we need to land. Truth endures. Truth endures. And I'm not sure many of us know what truth is anymore. And I heard recently that, we always talk about the media is supposed to be, unbiased. And historically, it never has been. Historically, it never has been. Early newspapers and all that stuff would always side with one group or another. So really we know we can't look to media, understand that they are nonpartisan. They're going to speak the truth the way they see it. But if we follow the rabbi known as Jesus, that's the truth that we can stand on. And that's the truth we can rely on. And that's the only truth. That's the only truth we can battle with. So here's sort of maybe a summary of sort of what I'm seeing based on this passage. The first Christians were tested because of persecution. Today, I believe we are tested because of privilege. I believe we are tested because of privilege. You see, we still have religious freedom. We can say almost anything without fear of repercussions, without fear of being arrested, without fear of being taken to court, without fear of being forced into silence, right? We have that freedom. We have that privilege still in our neck of the woods. And I hope that we'll have that for a long time. But here's the truth. That privilege and that ease makes us less likely to rely on Jesus. When we have this life of ease, of comfort, of no threat of anybody questioning us basically on our faith, we tend to rely on ourselves more than we rely on Jesus. This is anecdotal. I really can't prove this. It's sort of a gut feeling. I think the most persecutions that we face today are from other Christians. You see, we start disagreeing and arguing on the way we worship, how we baptize, how we do communion, women in ministry, spiritual gifts, even immigration and medicine. We start arguing about that stuff. And yeah, unfortunately, we have churches suing other churches, denominations suing churches. When the world looks at us, let's break it down. When our neighbor looks at us, they know we are a Christian. They don't care about the brand. They don't care about why you don't go to this church or this church, but what they do care about and what they listen to and what they see is when we start disparaging other churches, when we start saying something negative about other people that go to other churches. And when that happens, we give all followers of Christ a black eye. We do a disservice to all followers of Christ. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And when he can get when he gets people, churches that can't even agree with other churches, when he's got on the inside of that, man, that's tough. That's tough to overcome. The founder of Wesleyanism, Methodism, is a guy named John Wesley. And I'm going to really summarize a lot into just a few sentences, right? A few statements. But Wesley basically said, we can agree on the essentials. We can disagree on the non-essentials. That's not the issue. But we need to agree. If we can agree on the essentials, you're my brother, you're my sister. What are the essentials? Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus died on the cross. Jesus was resurrected. Jesus ascended to be with his Father. The Bible is God's word. If we can agree on that, we're brothers and sisters. Which means I can agree on the essentials with the Baptists, with the Assembly of God, the United Methodists, with the Presbyterians, with Church of Christ. I can agree on that with them. I'm really not in any competition with them. And I try my best not to say anything negative about any of the groups. Do I disagree with some of the non-essentials? Yes, I do. And some of you disagree with that too, right? That's why you're here, and that's why they're there. They disagree with some of the stuff that we have going on that's not essential, right? Anybody remember the Pogo comic strip? Pogo? Yeah, you're probably the only people in this audience will know what Pogo. 1970, a guy named Walt Kelly, in one of his comic strips for Pogo, had this quote that I bet you've heard before. We've met the enemy, and he is us. He met the enemy, and he is us. Here's the challenge. If someone followed you for one day, would they know you followed Jesus? If someone followed you for one day, would they know you followed Jesus? And I know some of you are saying, well, don't follow me on game day. I know that. So. You see, the same spirit that was with what is now over 70 million people since the time of Christ who have been killed for their faith, the same spirit that was with them that allowed them to have the strength to endure toward the literal end, that same spirit is available for you and me. And Jesus says, are you poor in spirit? Do you mourn? Are you meek? Are you hungering and thirsting for righteousness? Are you merciful? Do you have a pure heart? Are you a peacemaker? If people followed you for one day, would they see that? If you were put on trial for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Will you stand for the truth when it's unpopular? Will you love when it's difficult? Will you be faithful when it may cost you everything? Jesus promised us this. You know what? The journey is not going to be easy. The journey's not going to be easy. But the destination is worth it. You know, I wouldn't trade those Kentucky trips for anything, even though they were brutal. I wouldn't trade them. Memories were made, bonds were made. In November of 2023, myself, my son, and my daughter made that trip one last time. They were 29 and 26 at the time. A lot better than when they were 9 and 6, by the way. It was that trip that reminded me, you know what? I can enjoy this journey. The destination is great, but I can enjoy both. And just like I experienced, I learned to appreciate the journey and the destination, Jesus calls us to embrace the struggles that we face in our lives and embrace the joy of following him, knowing the destination is great. The journey I know isn't easy, but it's where our faith is formed. It's where our witness is shaped and our hearts are refined. One day, it will be worth it.